Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Greg Elliott, and as always today joined by my good friend, wonderful co-host, Zach Finch. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad.
We're back on a Saints-related podcast. We waffled a bit about mostly Wrexham yesterday. It's got to be said, but we're back. There is some breaking news at the time of recording from TalkSport's Simon Jordan that the club might be up for sale. I'm sure that things will develop on this, but do you think there's any reality based in that, Zach?
Well, the Daily Echo apparently heard rumours and then obviously asked the club, and they have been furiously denied by the club. And then you've also got, but they were essentially, the article, bless them, it was trying to make a whole article out of what is essentially some guy heard a rumour. But there's potential talk of them being unhappy in their investment and the fact they've spent all this money and wanted us to get back in the Premier League and wanted us to stay in the Premier League. And I don't know how much I play into it, and I'll tell you why, and I'll give my reasoning understanding. The amount of money that they've invested into out of football stuff seems like a complete wasted investment if they decide to just get rid of it, unless they can sell it at a bigger profit. And the rumoured price tag is 125 million, and they've spent 100 million to get us. I don't know if
investments, right? Like 100 million was the initial buying price, plus whatever they've put in to get to the point we're at.
So if they're trying to make £5 million, let's say that, it seems like a very crazy kind of way to do it. That's my first point. My second point is the fact that they have also gone through the pain of trying to apply for sort of planning permission around the area of St Mary's, knocking all of that down, and they're trying to essentially evolve the area around St Mary's Stadium into a commercial hub, right? So restaurants and shops to try and make the match day experience a bit better. But on top of that, also turn that area into an economic hub for Southampton, which, as we know, as much as we love our hometown, is a bit of a struggle. We're very much sort of, in my opinion, one of the cities that were completely lost in the whole regeneration of the North and the focus on the North and the whole quote unquote levelling up. That was wonderful, and it's good for the North to be sort of, but the South Coast, because it's just assumed all of it's Tory blue, it will all be fine. So Southampton's kind of been left behind, and you can see that with the debt. And I know this is probably a bit more political and a bit more sort of financial than we'd usually talk about, but I think my point is, why would you go through all of the pain of having to talk to councils and do all of that stuff if you were just then going to sell it on for like £2 million profit at the end of the day?
Well, I mean, since that initial proposal, Zach, we've not heard a huge amount. Could it be that the council have turned around and said, absolutely not, and now they're trying to cash out on their investment?
Perfectly acceptable. The other thing could be as simple as we got up to the Premier League, they were really excited, they thought, okay, well now we're back in the Premier League, and then realised we've crashed out again and don't want to go through the pain of doing it twice. And I could also kind of understand that. It just seems like it is... The only way that I could see them deciding to sell it is a very much cut your losses, but also they've invested a lot into the future, right? We've talked about this before with they've brought in Spurs. Unless Spurs turned around and went, there's nothing I can do with this club, what was the point? They've brought in a lot of players from clubs that they are also still going to own. And if they're just getting rid of Southampton, are they going to keep the other clubs? I very much imagine so, because they seem very invested in the Turkish club. I don't know how invested they are in the French club, but it seems like they will continue as the entity Sports Republic. Is it just going to be they get rid of Southampton? There's a lot of factors at play here. I know that there's a lot of people that will probably throw their hands in the air in celebration. It's because they want to get rid of them.
People have very short memories.
Yeah, because it's who would replace them, who would want to come in during a time. If they came in and purchased us, would they have the power and desire to want us to put us back in the Premier League? We've also heard from multiple different owners over the years that's what the aim is, and then you end up seeing what's happened at sort of like Reading and other clubs that are slowly sliding down the football pyramid, not due to any fault of their own. You watching managers not get paid and other people not get paid, and all of that kind of stuff is awful to see. So yeah, but I think those are the big things for me. Is it seems like it would be mad to invest a bunch for the future and then randomly just go, no, I'm done with this now. We're withdrawing all of our investment. But also from like a worldwide standpoint, like I would have never have said that there would be tariffs on stuff, right? Because you'd have started speaking to me about tariffs 6 months ago, and I'd be like, oh, what, those things that they used in like the 1800s? That is paraphrasing, but my point is that the world is in many different ways is extremely volatile in comparison to previous. There might be more things going on behind the scenes than we know. There might be people deciding to pull their investments, change their investments, put their money into what they consider to be safer options. And honestly, is football at this day and age a safe investment?
No.
There you go.
Well, definitely. I mean, it 100% isn't for a number of reasons, but specifically the league we're heading into. I think we talked about it off the podcast, and we'll probably get a full podcast out of it whilst we're making content when there's no football happening. But the budgets and particularly the wage to turnover ratio in the championship for most of the clubs down there is physically not sustainable. It is. I think that technically speaking, the league is insolvent, because if you add up all of the assets of the values of the clubs in the league and take away the amount it costs per year, it loses money as a league every year.
It's like isn't it like nuts, the most lucrative second league in the world, right? Something like that, which says a lot. But it's one of those things where if we did the same thing again, where we come down, we go straight back up, and they don't have a good enough plan, or something goes wrong, and we end up in the same situation. Like, I'm wondering if they just don't want to invest in that yo-yo. There's something that must be difficult to, if you're looking at like from just a money perspective, it must be difficult to see your profit margins in those areas when they will completely bounce around year after year after year after year. And you could easily understand why someone would go, I can do all of the work to build it, or I could just not. And this is where that part of insecurity in my mind comes in, where I like to think that they've said the right things, they're starting to do the right things, but also they could just flip it on its head and drop us, And I think that's where some of the problems come in general with club ownership. And we don't really have the boom of Chinese owners like we did sort of 8 years ago, where just the way that China's economic policy works now means that they wouldn't allow that anymore, and they are no longer going to be, that was during the time they were going to be this big footballing superpower, right? And that kind of dream very much died. I think BBC did a fantastic article about how that was such a big thing, but then there was a lot of corruption in the league, and then a lot of corruption with the ownership systems and all that kind of stuff. I just I can't see why, when you've invested this much, you would then bundle out at the last minute. But also, because of the current state of economics, I'm like, flip side of that, maybe everyone's just scared and will do weird, crazy things, and maybe getting rid of the football club that is potentially going to be a loss maker would be a good thing for them. I just would be very, very cautious about being excited as to what's next, if that is the case. But at time of talking, to be clear, this is a rumour from just a guy on the radio.
Morgan of football, Simon Jordan. Speaking of polarising figures, an absolute mouthpiece of TalkSport, and not someone that I put much credence in, let's put it that way. All right, well, let's move on from that, but first a message from our partners at Bioniq.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now. Your body is unique.
Okay, and we are back. Okay, so assuming that Sports Republic do stick around, we've got a much more pressing decision coming up in our near future, Zach. And that is who's going to take over. Now, I know you've got some episodes lined up where you look at that in some real depth, but I want to briefly talk to you about a new name that's come to light. Former Man United coach, currently the manager in Minnesota, and I have completely forgotten his name and don't have it on the screen in front of me. I want to say it's Eric someone. He's... I'll get it whilst we get your opinion, but he's been apparently interviewed for the job of the new manager, which, I mean, puts into repute anyone who thinks that the decision has been made and is there. What are your thoughts on that? Is that like another potential unknown that might come good, or?
So you're talking about Eric Ramsey, yeah, football manager?
Yes.
Who is, that's upsetting, almost a year older than me. It's one of those things that, for me, it's just a bit sort of out of left field. And again, we expected some left field picks, right? Because of the state the club are in and who wants to come here. And we've already talked before about established names and things like that. And maybe I'll do an episode on this guy. It's getting very difficult to keep track of who I should do episodes on, because I'm kind of low-key basing it on the odds at the moment, because, bookies usually know first, as Greg will tell you, working at the bookies. So, yeah, it's a very strange thing.
For a reason.
I did just say that I did just see here that he worked alongside Kieran McKenna as well at the university football team in Loughborough, which is weird coincidence. But yeah, I mean, if it's one of those things that might end up being well for us, then fine. But I just always have this worry now about how pragmatic managers will approach taking control of our team is. And that's why, so far, what I've quite liked and what we've discussed about with Rusk and Lallana, not that I'm saying they're a shoo-in for the job, but who knows, is that they have taken each game as it comes and prepared for it as best they can. I will admit they had a very Juric-esque moment at the end of the game against Fulham by deciding that we're going to try and play for the draw and try and bring on defensive substitutions. Very, very strange to me. Feel like we could have carried on going, bringing off Matias Fernandez of all people, unless he's got a knock. Don't understand why you do it.
Yeah, looking back on it, he was visibly tiring at that point.
There you go. But then we do have outfield players,
and you have to question, was there a correct decision? Maybe not. And any of those players that we brought off the bench would have been in the same position where they have to come on against better opposition and warm into a game quickly. And
that's not very nice to talk about Ryan Fraser like that, mate.
Look, I'm saying that Matty Fernandez is far and away our best player this season, and they're big shoes to fill.
Replacing that player, replacing his shoes on the football pitch. But, I understand that they have to make the decisions with the team that they've got, and that's true. But my overall point around this is they have played with a bit more pragmatism, and I think that I worry about any manager coming in and wanting to mold what they've got into their own weird philosophy. And I don't know that much about him. And when I do these sort of research episodes, it depends. So Oscar was very sort of adamant. He thinks that Roll would be a good fit. And I think maybe that's the case from a statistical standpoint, and given that he's got the ambition and things like that. But then I also worry about where they sit ambition-wise, because I just don't think that a lot of people see Southampton as their final destination. And that's fine, as long as they actually try to build something here and don't jump ship first of all. And I think what this is actually saying more about me than anything, Greg, is I think I'm going to be hugely paranoid no matter who takes charge, because I can't really think of a manager since probably Hasenhüttl, and maybe Russell Martin during the time that we weren't losing. Admittedly, there were a lot of draws in there, that has made me sort of have a lot of faith specifically in that manager and not be consistently worried they're going to put a foot wrong. Obviously, Koeman beforehand as well, but even he had his run with bad games. So yeah, it's just I say that like Hasenhüttl didn't have 2 9-0 losses. So yeah, wrapping it up, I think that regardless of who I talk about in the past, and I don't know where I'm going to be comfortable, right? And for every time they get it right, they seem to get it wrong 2 or 3 times more. And that's just not under Sports Republic. That is looking back at when we brought in Sparky, when we brought in Pellegrino, who people may or may not remember. He was the one that brought in Carrillo, I think his name was, the striker that never scored for us, that we spent the most amount of money on up until we bought Solomana. So, yeah, I think that I am always going to be a huge skeptic. So with an unknown like that, it would be like, I'd like to do my research. Maybe I'd feel a little bit better. But I always wonder what their plans are behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And again, I just don't think that you're going to give me a name and it made me think a lot. And I'll tell you when. It was when you were sort of like, oh, well, I'd actually be genuinely all right with Big Sam. And then you're like, what names would you actually be happy with? And I'm sat there like, Eddie Howe, like 6-7 years ago, maybe. Not even Eddie Howe now. Like, you have to get Jason Tyndall with him, who I've also seen at one point links us, which was a very, very weird. Again, some of the links that you're seeing are nuts. So who knows? It just seems like, well, if you've got Lallana and Ruskin that are leading the team currently, and they're doing all right, what would convince you to take a massive gamble on an unknown manager from the MLS?
Oh, I've got some thoughts on that, and I will get to them. But first, a message from our partners at Zencastr. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description and learn more about Zencastr. Okay, we're back. I can't remember if we talked about this on the show or offline, and that's the problem with how much football we talk about. Do you think that Rusk and Lallana, if we give it to them, it just shows a lack of ambition in a different way, right? Like, you say that why would you take a risk because you've got the known quantities there and they'll be all right and they'll do this, but actually it's not going out and getting, be it an unpromised talent or a potential superstar or a known quantity manager. It's just, well, they're here, they'll do.
I think it's less than that. You've already talked about this already. This is a pre-season. For me, this is a job interview that you've been given charge of the team for the rest of the season. Show us what you can do with the current team, the way that it currently stands. Because then say he takes charge and they both take charge together, and then they're given resources and they're given players to scout. Players will be scouted by Spores and they'll be told, and then they kind of come to some sort of agreement. That's better, in my opinion, than randomly pulling in some guy off the street that's never even heard of Southampton that will say, oh, it's been my dream to, and they always say, manage in the Premier League. And that's what, Juric was the same. It's always been he took the risk to come here to manage in the Premier League. He didn't come to take the risk to manage Southampton. And it's one of the things that is frustrating is that, I understand that we are seen as nothing more to a lot of people than a project. And the thing is, for both of them, it would probably mean something more than that. So I guess, I don't know how I've managed to talk myself into this, because if you told me before their first couple of games in charge that this would be where my stand, the hill that I've been dying on currently was, I wouldn't believe you, right? I'd have been like, no, but then also...
I'm a bit baffled by it as well, mate, because although they're probably on form, arguably like the most points per game from a manager we've had this season, they haven't won a game yet.
Yeah, but then how many other managers have won games for us? Ruud van Nistelrooy came into Leicester, got them to win twice, and they did nothing. They didn't even score a goal at home. I don't know. The problem is you don't know if it's just because of the state of the league. And from our perspective, it's like it must be pretty impossible to try and manage the players that we have. They have played two weird different systems of terrible risk-reward football that hasn't worked for them. Their confidence must be completely shot to pieces. The good players we do have are being picked at like with the vultures already circling. Where you had Man United in Dibbling's debut against Man United straight after that game. We even had it on the crossover, mate. You had it on the crossover. I wasn't on that one. They were talking about, we'll take that Dibbling up. We were getting picked apart despite that. Ramsdale, he was sold in December, January. Half our players then disappeared. You've got to think that, I think that it is almost working miracles. The fact they've even got points. I didn't expect us to get anything between now and the end of the season. I kind of expected us to go down without even a whimper. So the fact that they have even managed to get enough motivation to get draws is baffling to me. Like that's where I'm at, and also you don't know what they would be able to do when backed. Whereas you bring someone in, it goes Pete Tong, we get rid of them again in January, and as I said, also for me, maybe that connection to Southampton is more important than I initially thought.
Yeah.
Whereas the connection, people talk about the connection that Roll had. He was here for 6 months in a tenure of a manager that's 3-4 managers ago.
Yeah.
His tenure here was he spent some time in the dugout.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, and I hope that whatever happens, that they stay in and about the place. I think there's a lot to be said for, especially specifically Adam Lallana, who's so familiar with the system, to be a part of any set of coaches that come in and do it. But I just think that Spores is going to be so keen on setting. It's going to be the first manager that's his appointment. Right?
Yeah.
So he's going to want to stamp his identity on it and make the decision that's his. And I think that the blokes that were already here are good enough. You should have given it to them in the first place. It's not ambitious. That statement.
No, and you're probably right, and I will have to get over that, and that will be that. But I think it's what my mind is. If you roll back to when Martin was fired, and we had our busy episode where we were like all hyped up, and it felt like I was on a sugar rush because we were in a podcast when it was, we're doing a post-match review and the news literally dropped in front of us. I said maybe we need to go out and get someone that's just completely unknown and we've never heard of. And then all the names started coming out and people were talking about Roll back then. And then out of nowhere, this random Croatian bloke called Ivan Juric gets hired. And we're like, oh, they've hired this guy. And then we did the episode and we were talking about, oh, he's got this heavy metal style of football. Maybe it's going to be really exciting. And oh, they've got all these plans. And then we actually watched the football happen. It was like, okay, well, it wasn't that bad a loss. And it's like, okay, that was a bad loss. Okay, that's a bad loss. That's a worse loss. What's happening here? And and obviously we knew that was a poison chalice from the start. Maybe having a whole preseason and a season would be different. I don't know if that's the case with Juric because, he kind of had that at Roma and still managed to mess up his Roma job. So both jobs he's had this year, he's done practically the same thing. So I think it's me is like, I want to almost, do you take that abundant level of caution? Or I think if the goal is to come straight back up from the Championship next year into the Premier League, I think you're right. We need a big bang appointment, something that's going to be exciting, something with a project, something to build on. And, maybe Rusk and Lallana are there in a support pass capacity, maybe they're not. If their plan is stability long term and they kind of accept that there might be an inevitability that we stay in the Championship set next season, I think that they might go with the stable option. Now, I don't think that that's ambitious and I don't think that's exciting, but we've also talked a lot about football survival. And again, if we aim to go straight back up next season, they better hope to all of the deities that they care about in the sky that they have a plan to stay in the league that is solid. And if that all rests on Spores, and Spores has said it would all rest on him, and then he gets fired, and then it collapses.
Yeah. I guess if
what's the worst thing that could happen,
They don't have to pay a big amount for a manager or any sort of severance required from their ex-club and keep with what's at the club. That's arguably more money that we could spend on someone who might score us some goals.
Here's another thing that we haven't really thought about or really discussed. If they are planning to install some sort of, I don't know, Southampton way again, Spores' way, the Spores way, what is to stop Rusk and Alana being there over the summer, establishing the system they want to play, and then, because they've not had to pay a bunch of compensation, they've not had to pay a lot of money, they can bring in a manager, say, in November, December. They can bring in somebody, because the other thing is that I don't think they're going to want to make a rash appointment. And they're showing that because they are taking their time. So that is, I feel like that is the most unpopular way of doing it.
Not give them a pre-season, not give them a proper transfer window. Oh, that sounds awful.
It does sound awful, but it is also something that I could see us doing in the sake of stability. And the sake of stability is a thing that they have to be thinking about. And rolling back to earlier with are we up for sale? No, but
if the right offer comes in, maybe.
Yeah. So there's, as you can tell, I have lots of thoughts and feelings on it all, and most of them are just confusion. And I struggle to see what the right way is going forward, because everyone's saying, oh, it's roll this, but then again, it could be someone completely out of left field. And if it is someone out of left field, it's going to take a lot for me at this stage to want to put my trust into data and analytics and statistics when we have been burnt by that a lot recently. So I think it's just, again, I'm just paranoid, Greg.
Yeah. And on the other end of the spectrum, Zach, I'm fully in for whatever project we're at, and we're winning the championship next year. So
Heavy metal Durich Ball, let's go, baby! He comes back, does a second spell. Maybe we'll get Nathan Jones again. He's doing all right at Charlton. Or the other one, which I've seen on Saints Marching, is Hasenhüttl again. And to be clear, I'm not doing a manager profile of any of the previous managers we've had. You can just check their Wikipedia for that.
Next up on our profile, potential Saints candidate, Russell Martin. Right.
Next, or alternatively, a manager who has lost 9-0 twice in the last couple of years.
Well, that is just about all we got time for today. Thank you very much for joining us. Let us know on the socials. Is there any name that would be appointed as manager that would make you happy? Let us know. Drop as many outlandish wild names as you can at us.
Not Sam Allardyce.
Back to profiles on all of them.
Not Sam Allardyce. We're not getting Big Sam, Greg. No, we're not. No,
I'll take it. I think
I've promised everyone that I will shut this talk down. We are not taking Sam Allardyce. And now I'll let you back to your outro.
Until then, we will be back tomorrow as we start to cast our eyes
on who our next potential manager could be, because tomorrow will be my manager profile.
Yes,
then we will do. Alas, we do not have a crossover due to lack of availability from our Leicester partners.
That's it. Well, until then, we will be back. Thank you very much for listening. As always, Zach, thank you for joining me. We'll see you tomorrow.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.